So let's take a moment to celebrate today. I'm going to talk to you about two selected provisions from the Secure 2.0 Act to get you excited about stashing more money in your FU fund, right? This is a huge part of my mission, is to get more wonderful, mission-driven, values-aligned people building generational wealth. So this is a bill that actually is going to help you make that possible. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for self-employed people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're a creative or soul-centered entrepreneur or wellness practitioner who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place. Hello, welcome. Today, I want to talk to you about how to stash even more FU money, how the Secure 2.0 Act expands your retirement funding options. So there was legislation passed just very recently called the Secure 2.0 Act. I want to give you some selected points from the Secure 2.0 Act because the purpose of this legislation is really awesome. Basically, this was passed in order to solve the problem of too many Americans not having enough money saved for retirement. So the point of the Secure 2.0 Act that was just passed by Congress is really to expand various ways that you can put money into your tax sheltered retirement accounts. And it helps employers set up new retirement accounts, whether you're a small employer or a large one. It gives a lot of incentives to employers. It expands who's eligible to use those accounts, including part-time workers. And it also really cleverly lowers the barrier to a lot of people's biggest fear about putting money into retirement accounts. What is that fear? It is, what if I need the money, right? So a lot of people do not put money into their retirement accounts because they're fearful that they might need that money in an emergency and they want to be able to access it. So very cleverly, a huge part, multiple parts of the Secure 2.0 Act actually address this issue by creating more exceptions, more reasons, like legal ways that you can take money out of your retirement before you otherwise would be allowed to without penalty in cases of emergency. And that includes domestic abuse specifically as a line item as well. So it's very exciting. It's very smart. It's very progressive policy. I just feel so excited. This will help US taxpayers, no matter who you are, no matter what party you're in, this is going to help you. And so I just want to, for one thing, just take a moment today to celebrate some actual progress and a great bill that Congress passed. I think it's fantastic. You know, one of the things I love about the work that I do is that I get to read when tax laws get passed and I see what actually happened, right? When you listen to the news or read the news or even the Instagram digested version of the news is built to foster controversy and rage and provoke rage, right? That's what sells newspapers and gets you to click. But actually, this world, we don't all hate each other. The world is not completely dysfunctional. Our country is not falling apart. And that's very clear when you read tax bills. So real stuff actually does get done. And just, I guess that publishing headlines that say, stuff got done today, no big whoop. Like, just doesn't sell enough newspapers. It doesn't get you to click like provoking your rage does. And so that's not how we set up our system. So, this is kind of a personal moment, Hannah's personal philosophy, but ever since 2016, when the headlines just seem worse and worse and worse, I realized how huge of a mental health toll my, daily NPR and New York Times habit was having on my mental health. And I made a very conscious decision not to soak in so much news Now, it's important to me to stay well informed. I think that's a value and I care about it. But I try to take in my news in ways where it will not stoke my fear and anxiety. So, one of the ways that I do that is I listen to Marketplace. I listen to Marketplace news and I read the economic news, because the fact is that investors have to know what's going on in the world. They don't need to be provoked into outrage. So actually, I find that money has been a wonderful lens for me to absorb the news of the world and stay well informed, while bypassing and sidestepping this whole rage factory, this whole dysfunction factory that I think other news outlets, whether they truly intend to or not, are actually a big part of stoking. So anyway, that's a little bit personal about me. But what I want to bring you today is some of my joy, some of my celebration about real shit that's getting done in our country that you can feel proud of, whether you're progressive or not, right? Whether you agree with my politics or not. This stuff is good. This stuff is just going to give employers more money and more reason to share awesome benefits with their employees. And it's going to give employees ways to take advantage of tax savings. And it's going to give self-employed people ways to also take advantage of tax savings. It's freaking amazing. And it doesn't matter what party you're in or what your preferred news outlet is. So let's take a moment to celebrate today. I'm going to talk to you about two selected provisions from the Secure 2.0 Act to get you excited about stashing more money in your FU fund, right? This is a huge part of my mission, is to get more wonderful, mission-driven, values-aligned people building generational wealth. So this is a bill that actually is going to help you make that possible. So let's talk about it. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I recently recorded a training that goes into a lot of depth where I selected all the key provisions from the Secure 2.0 Act that I felt were the most relevant to a self-employed person. And I did a training on it. And I am including this training as a bonus for people who join my program called Money Bootcamp, which the doors are open to right now, only through Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is tomorrow. So if you're listening to this right now and you needed a little reminder, you thought maybe I might want to join, I might want to check it out. Let me see the sales page. I'm just going to tell you right now that you can go to sunlighttax.com/moneybootcamp 2023. That's the sales page. It is open only until 5 o'clock tomorrow. And you can go see the details of the program, what you get out of it, what you will get when you join. But one of the new things, one of the bonuses I'm offering in this last round of doors being open before this year's tax deadline comes, is this bonus training where I go into depth on all of the relevant areas of the Secure 2.0 Act to teach you how the new rules for stashing more money in your FU accounts. But for today's episode, I'm going to pull out two of these provisions in the Secure 2.0 Act. I'm going to teach you about these two provisions. All right. So let's just get started. So first of all, what even is the Secure 2.0 Act? Let's talk about it. On December 20th, 2019, the first Secure Act was passed. It's called the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement. The acronym is SECURE. And we now refer to that as Secure 1.0. Okay, so that was the original one. So we've tried to do this before, and this recent bill is the sort of second attempt to go even deeper, which is great. I also think, side note on politics, I feel like our politics has gotten so divisive, and we've forgotten that our whole governmental system was built on compromise, like two parties talking to each other. Compromise is okay. We passed this bill in 2019, Secure 1.0, and it wasn't perfect. And here we are, 4 years later, we passed a second version of it to go further on the same path. All right. This is not necessarily something that needs to be partisan. I don't actually think anything in this bill really feels partisan to me personally. Anyway, I'm clearly giving a little my political flavor in this episode here. I hope you're okay with that. The Secure 2.0 Act is part of a larger piece of legislation, very sexily titled the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023. Charming, isn't it? The Secure 2.0 Act, it makes multiple enhancements to IRAs and qualified plan rules. And the general purpose is to increase access to retirement accounts and lower taxpayer barriers to funding those accounts. Okay. So, honestly, to me, an angel got its wings when this piece of legislation was passed. I love it. This is everything that I want in the world. Well, all right, I'd like to end hunger and poverty and homelessness, but it's a good start. In the Secure 2.0 Act, some of the things that happen are it creates more flexibility for you to start, maintain, and fund tax advantage retirement accounts, including for sole proprietor businesses like you listening right now. There's broader exceptions granted for emergency withdrawals of funds, which is great because that is one of the chief barriers of low to moderate income people not making retirement contributions. So hopefully this bill will alleviate some of those fears for people who have been holding back from stashing money into their FU funds. Honestly, this is a bill that's just going to help more people have more FU money. All right, let's get into it. So, number one, I want to talk to you about the improvements to coverage for part-time workers. So, a lot of people in the creative world, the healing space, the care space, mission-driven entrepreneurs, a lot of us have part-time work, right? Some of you might be adjunct professors. Some of you might work part-time at nonprofits. So if you work for an organization that has a 401k or a 403b, listen up because the Secure 2.0 Act has expanded coverage for part-time workers to be able to contribute to the 401k plans and 403b plans of the organizations that you work for, even though you're part-time. Historically, 401ks and 403bs have only been accessible to full-time employees. So this is a big, dramatic change, and it might mean that you listening suddenly have access to a 401k that you have not had access to before. All right, so listen up. The Secure Act requires employers to allow long-term part-time workers to participate in the employer's 401k plans. The Secure Act provides that except in the case of collectively bargained plans, employers maintaining a 401k plan must have a dual eligibility requirement under which an employee must complete either 1 year of service with the 1,000 hour of work rule, or 3 consecutive years of service where the employee completes at least 500 hours of service. The Secure 2.0 Act reduces the 3-year rule to 2 years, effective for plan years beginning after 2024. In other words, in 2025. Okay, so it's coming in a little bit, not immediate. The Secure 2.0 Act provides that pre-2021 service is disregarded for vesting purposes, just as such service is disregarded for eligibility purposes under current law, effective as if included in the Secure Act to which the amendment relates. Okay, and I just want you to know that the Secure 2.0 Act extends this long-term part-time coverage rule to 403b plans, so not just 401ks. 403bs are typically retirement plans with very similar rules to 401ks, except they're generally administered by a nonprofit. So if you work for a university, a large nonprofit, a museum perhaps, then your retirement plan is going to probably be called a 403b, not a 401k. Okay, so if this is you, if you have worked for an organization for 1 year and put in 1,000 hours of service, or for 3 consecutive years and put in a cumulative total of 500 hours, which is not a huge bar, y'all, then you may now be eligible to put money into their 401k or 403b plan. So I want you to go march up to HR. Maybe you're going to give them this episode to listen to so that they have to implement the law. It might take them a minute. And I want you to have a conversation about what you need to do to sign into that plan. Okay. All right. Okay. The second thing I want to talk to you about today is quite a mouthful, but it's basically an expansion of a previously existing tax credit that can apply to people who start a solo 401k. All right. So it is officially called a modification of the credit for small employer pension plan startup costs. Again, we're so good at titling things in Congress. Super sexy. Just kidding. So basically, to be totally honest with you, the reason that I'm so excited about this is I just was doing my own taxes and I got this credit. And I was sort of surprised by it. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. So I'm kind of feeling like, oh, I should talk about this credit because, people like me are eligible for it. So let's do that. So under pre-Secure 2.0 rules, there was a 3-year small business startup credit, and it was 50% of that plan's administrative costs up to an annual cap of $5,000. So half of the cost of your, starting up a new 401k plan would be given to you as a tax credit. P.S. Tax credits are awesome. Tax credits are always better than tax deductions, okay? A deduction takes taxable income off your taxable income amount. A credit is just a dollar for dollar reduction in your tax bill. So tax credits are the powerful ones. Deductions are great, but they're not nearly as strong, okay? All right, so the Secure Act 2.0, so here's the change, increase the startup credit from 50% of your startup costs to 100% for employers with up to 50 employees. If you're listening to this show, you don't have more than 50 employees, right? Okay. Under the Secure Act 2.0, except in the case of defined benefit plans, an additional credit is provided. Awesome. The amount of the additional credit will be a percentage of the amount contributed by the employer on behalf of employees, up to a per employee cap of $1,000. The applicable percentage is 100% in the first and second tax years, 75% in the third year, 50% in the fourth year, 25% in the fifth year, and 0% in the sixth and subsequent years. The applicable percentage is based on the date the plan was established, not when employees begin to participate in the plan. So the Secure Act 2.0 changed the credit, so it now has 2 parts, and they are each calculated separately. So you can get one part of the credit or you can get both. All right. I got both and I was so excited about it. Oh my goodness. So a qualified startup cost portion available for the first 3 years of the plan's existence, and an employer contribution portion available for the first 5 years of the plan's existence. Okay. So what does this mean? Also, I want you to know this is effective in 2023. So it's effective for taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2022. This is super nice. This is super, super nice. This means if you are a solopreneur and you start a solo 401k, which you are totally entitled to do, and which I highly encourage you to do, if you have the resources and the administrative capacity, that is important. But if you do, starting a solo 401k can be a wonderful option. And the costs of starting it now will come back to you as a tax credit. How cool is that? And furthermore, if you have employees, or if in later years you decide to take on employees, you will be eligible for an additional credit for any matching you do for those employees. I happen to get 2 sides of this credit this year because I have had employees. I don't actually currently, but I have had employees even within the last tax year, and I have a 4% match that I do through my 401k plan that I have established at Sunlight Tax. So I think this thing is really awesome. And I also want to tell you I know that it seems a little bit intimidating, perhaps, the idea of starting a 401k plan, but here's what I want to tell you. I just want to tell you how simple it actually can be, because there's companies out there, software companies, that make it really easy. All right. So I'm just going to straight up tell you how I do it. I use Gusto as a payroll software. I love Gusto. I'm going to include my affiliate link in the show notes. Yes, I do make money when you click that link, but I use Gusto myself. I love it. I think there's nothing better out there. So I really endorse it because I believe in it. So Gusto is really awesome because it's a payroll software that is very intuitive to use. It's very easy to set up. It kind of walks you through the hard stuff. And frankly, what it does is it charges you $39 a month for what you used to have to pay a couple $100s a month to get an accountant to do for you. It is just such a no-brainer to me. I can't imagine doing anything else. I was very intimidated to set up payroll for myself when I formed an S Corp, but Gusto really made it easy. So I feel really happy with it. And so I set that up. The key thing that's really cool about Gusto is it hooks into all these other softwares. So there's a software called Guideline. Guideline is a company that administers 401k plans. And, I just hooked Guideline up to Gusto. And so it works through Gusto payroll software so that every single pay period where I pay myself on payroll, I also have a contribution going into my 401k. And then I also have an employer match. I'm the employer and I match it through the other side of the payroll. So it just, honestly, because of these two pieces of software, setting up a 401k for my company has been really easy. Even though there are some rules about 401ks that you have to comply with, and that can be a little intimidating, the Guideline system kind of makes it simple. You just sort of check some boxes and they send you a checklist every year to make sure you're in compliance. It basically makes it easy. So I will link to Guideline and to Gusto in the show notes. So if you're interested in checking out either of those services, you can. And I just really think, honestly, I think an angel gets its wings every time a small business person sets up a 401k plan, sets up a retirement account for themselves and or for their employees. And so it's just such a good thing to do. And it helps you in the future. So those are the two most important parts of the Secure 2.0 Act that I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope that if you are a part-time employee, if you've had a part-time job and you meet one of those hour requirements that I just mentioned, that you will go talk to your HR department, that you will go tell them that you think you are now eligible to be part of their 401k plan or 403b plan. Get yourself enrolled in it and start putting money aside into your FU money. And if you work for yourself and you have the capacity to open up a 401k plan, then I want you to know that there's this really awesome tax credit that will now be for up to 100% of the startup costs. In other words, that Guideline monthly fee that you pay, you get it all back as a tax credit. And if you have employees, then even better, you'll get an additional tax credit. So super, super cool. There's lots more in the Secure 2.0 Act. It's a fairly large piece of legislation. And I just did a bonus training on all of the pieces of it that I find to be the most relevant to self-employed people. That is available if you join Money Bootcamp in the bonuses section. I'm offering it as a bonus. And if you're already in Money Bootcamp, go check out the bonuses section because I just put it in there. So it's brand new for you in there. I hope this has been a helpful and hopeful episode for you. I want you to just soak in the fact that some stuff does get done. The news might be giving you a view on this world that is a little more bleak than is actually warranted. And I want you to go out there and just stash some extra money in your FU money. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.